Good afternoon, Andrii. Can you hear and see us? Good afternoon. Yes, I can see and hear you. Welcome on the second stage of the selection process for the High Qualification Commission of Judges of Ukraine. And the interview is held by all members of the Selection Commission. These are Robert Brookhuizen, Ivan Mishchenko, Sergei Verlanov, Tadzhachny, Yevhen Mezentsev, and Stephen Markman. The rapporteurs at your interview are Sergei Verlanov and Robert Brookhuizen. So, Andrii, if for technical reasons there is no connection or there is an air alarm, we will stop the interview, but the Commission will reach you and we will find some other place, some other time and date to continue with the interview, starting with the place where we stopped, if this happens. We have a request that you give concise answers to the core of the matter, and the member of the Commission asking the question can actually limit the duration of your speech. And traditionally, the interview will start with us giving the floor to you to present yourself, to tell about your motivation and your ideas, and to generally speak to the Commission with a kind of an introductory speech. So let's start, dear colleagues, and let me give the floor to Robert and Sergei. You're welcome. Sergei? Good afternoon, Andrii. So I'm the rapporteur, and the co-reporter is Robert Brookhuizen, as mentioned by the chairperson of the Commission. So let me briefly tell your CV data. Halai Andrii Alexandrovich, born on the 22nd of October 1977. He's got higher legal education, is Doctor of Law, Professor. The overall work experience in the field of law is more than 22 years. He has provided the certificate of the command of the Ukrainian language of the second higher degree. He started his career in 1998 as senior criminal investigator, and later he was the lecturer of Kyiv Institute of Internal Affairs. Further on, he also worked in the Institute of Criminal Enforcement Service in Kyiv, and in the National Academy of the Prosecutor's Office of Ukraine in Kyiv, International University in Kyiv. Since 2016 up to 2018, he worked in Ternopil National Economic University. Since March 2020, he started working in the National Agency in Corruption Prevention. And since December 2021 up till now, he's been working at the department, Criminal Enforcement Department in Kyiv, and he is deputy head of the department. Andrii, the floor is yours. According to our protocol and procedure, you have to tell us within some 5 minutes about the motives for your participation in this selection. You're welcome. Good afternoon, dear commissioners. It's an honor for me to present to you my vision of my participation in the HQCJ. I'm Andrii Halai, I'm 45, and I have different background of different professions. Mainly this is academic and teaching career of more than 22 years, starting with assistant lecturer to professor and head of the department. My PhD thesis came earlier, and in 2015 I got my doctoral thesis, and I treat law as a tool and instrumental materials. Individually and within scientific teams, I can really do science, which should be the guidance for practice. I've also been dealing for more than 20 years with expert and public activity. I started as the head of the law clinic of a higher education institution, and law clinic is a special institution that allows students to do some practical activity while studying, and the lecturers can ensure the quality of their work. And over the period of my academic career, I created law clinics in all higher education institutions where I work, because I think that practical component is the most important thing for lawyers. this. Later, I also developed law clinics in the National Association. I stopped being the chairperson of this national association in 2020. And actually, this association has been acknowledged globally. Also, I worked in different directions as a trainer, as an expert, as an analyst in civil society organizations, and most of all in the Helsinki Union. And I was involved as the technical aid expert in penitentiary service, decentralization, and I was introducing reforms. And the main competences I got during my civil life activities, understanding of human rights, activism, a good approach to the combination and the good relationship between the civil society and the state. My doctoral thesis is really a practical research which helps me in my further work. And after the Revolution of Dignity, I was looking for the opportunity to help our country leave the trap, the pitfall into which it has fallen. And I have been working in the National Agency in Corruption Prevention. I was the head of the department dealing with strategic development of the anti-corruption infrastructure and managed to do a lot and to learn a lot. At the beginning of this phase of war, I started working in the penitentiary service, which is not a new field for me. As a deputy head of the service, I work with a new challenge of transforming the whole system into the public service, and I want to eradicate the old stereotype of prison as just the place of punishment. I'm grateful to you for selecting me for this interview. I have a wife and almost an adult daughter. We live in the apartment given by the state. My parents and my wife's parents are ordinary people who live separately. My daughter is having her studies, not within the legal profession, and I'm here at the interview because I want to be of use for the country. And I understand that judiciary and reform of the judiciary is the most important thing for the development of Ukraine, because without justice, without an inclusive state policy, all the other reforms are going to be sandcastles and not real reforms in all the other segments. That's why I would like to join in the judiciary reform, and I want Ukrainian lawyers to be proud of the highest level of the judiciary. I want the courts to be trusted by the society, and I want the revolutions for the sake of the future to stop. We just need to have reforms. I can really make changes for the better, and I have proven it in all places where I worked, and I can prove this here. Thank you, Andrii. Let's go over to the next stage, the stage of questions. So, Andrii, in your written explanations which you provided to the Selection Commission, you claim that the specialization of your research activity is management in the field of penitentiary activity, which actually correlates well to the position you are now in. Explain the motives for your desire to drastically change the profile of your activity and to become a member of the HQCJ. It's a very good question, but if you allow me, I will try to expand on it, and I will tell you a story. Well, we actually would ask you to give concise answers to the core of the issue for us to get a better idea of what kind of candidate you are and to really see your motives. To be as brief as possible, I would like to say that our state is facing major challenges. Either it will overcome the challenges and will join the developed world and achieve the objectives for the sake of which Ukrainians are now laying down their lives, or not. And therefore, to do this, it's important to set the priorities. So I think that We now have a very important field, the judiciary, which is to be reformed. This is not a segment which is far from my field of activity. This is not the field I have nothing to do with. And I would like just to make a better contribution by applying the skills I've got. And I would like to be useful where I am. I don't want to leave anything. I have several fields where I'm an expert and which I'm interested in, and this is one of them. But could you please tell us in detail, you have just mentioned that you can be useful, you can make a contribution in this position, and there are several fields where you can use your skills. So please explain to the Commission what do you mean by those fields of activity. Well, the fields of my practical interests and research interests include the anti-corruption activity, also issues related to professional ethics, also training of adults, and the work of jurisdictional institutions and state institutions. And each of these components correlates well with the work in the High Qualification Commission of Judges. Well, thank you. Andrii, here is another question to you. In paragraph 8, actually your answer to question 8 of the motivation letter, you have mentioned that in order to raise trust, if you are appointed in the judiciary, if you are appointed a member of the HQCJ, it will be necessary to restore the regulations of the work of the HQCJ, which are criticized as overcomplicated and not transparent. Then you have to follow the opinions of the European Commission. Where do you see this lack of transparency and complicatedness of complexity of current rules and procedures? What are the specific actions or specific proposals that would ensure transparency and simplification of those rules? Well, thank you for the question. If you allow me, I will give an example and explain this by the example. Comparative analysis of the methodology of qualification assessment of judges of the HQCJ and the methodology of the selection commission for the HQCJ shows the difference between them. Qualification assessment, I think, is over-formalized and over-detailized. It looks like a nice document for brainstorming, but there are several stages of brainstorming. The first stage is when you develop the full proposal and then extra proposals are cut off. It seems to me that in the rules and the methodology of the qualification assessment, this last stage was not performed when extra elements were removed. That's why it still contains a lot of other formal procedures which are the grounds for further appeals, for further claims, and as a result of that, we have the long process of proving. But let's have a look at the methodology of the selection commission, which is concise, which is more universal, and allows to substantiate certain facts on the basis of the standpoint of the commission. And you don't just have to tick different elements and to pass a formal decision on the basis of this, but there are some criteria that characterize the integrity, and there are some criteria that characterize the competence, and there is the substantiation of the commission, the arguments. The Commission is trusted by the society because it has been appointed, and we have competent, high-quality lawyers who are really trusted by the state and by the society. I also suggest that we should do the same in the procedures of work for the High Qualification Commission. I have got some more detailed comments, but no, not now. Thank you. We have heard your point of view. Thank you. Of course, we feel pleased that you estimate our methodology as a good one and that you agree with the rules and procedures that have been used by the Selection Commission, and that you will also try, in case you are appointed a member of the HQCJ, to use the same methodology in your practice. It's clear. I've got one more question to you. You are the deputy head of the Department of Criminal Enforcement in Kyiv. The head of this department is Mr. Hryshchanyuk Serhiy. Of course, you know this, and you have provided some explanation concerning this because we ask you questions. And you have explained that you have been cooperating in the academic respect with this man since the beginning of the 2000s. And you explained that you were still hired to the department following a special procedure, and you had the rank of colonel, right? This procedure was initiated by Mr. Hryshchanyuk, right? It was not on the basis of the open competition, so please clarify it to the Commission. In spite of the fact that legal procedures are followed, is it really possible that such circumstances can create the impression of you being engaged and create the impression of lack of transparency of your appointment to this position? Thank you for the question. This is a good question. Let me say that it's difficult to actually imagine what the impression of the public could be, but let me try to explain in the shortest and simplest way possible, because I've actually provided detailed explanations. I got acquainted with Mr. Hryshchanyuk within the field of my activity and academic interests, like the penitentiary service. We are not relatives. We don't have any other relations. We are not from the same village or something like this. We just used to work together quite often, and I feel pleased to work together with him. I hope he also finds it pleasing to work with me. And I think that this, I could put a stop here, a full stop. The selection is not envisaged by legislation for my type of service. But nevertheless, in the explanations, I said that he just gave a recommendation to me, while the procedures of appointment were complying with were performed by the top-level officials. I'm the expert of the penitentiary service, and there are not that many experts like this in Ukraine, and not many of them are ready to work in state institutions. It's more comfortable to work as experts on behalf of civil society organizations and international organizations. I used to hold positions like this, and this means that there is no leap forward in terms of my mandate. I have a good rank to be a candidate for this position, so the staff procedure, the staff selection procedure was actually followed, and there is no conflict of interest here because I've got just working relationship. That's okay. If people working together can work together and can achieve something together, can do mutually useful things. Okay, clear. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you for your answer. I will now pass the floor to Mr. Robert Brueggehuizen. Robert, you're welcome.
Thank you, Sergi. Mr. Halai, when I looked at your profile, I was wondering why someone who is the head of the correctional service should be elected in the HQCJ. Also, when I look at your biography, I do not see any experience within the judiciary. Can you explain that to us?
Yes, thank you for the question. I would like to tell you that my professional profile is wider than the job that I'm currently doing. I have competencies in assessment and analysis of integrity, which is valuable for HQCJ. I'm an academic who has published papers with regards to judiciary in particular. I've been a lecturer who lectured in disciplines connected to professional legal ethics and the structure of the judiciary. That's why my current position is just one of the many facets of my career and one of the many circles of my interest. And I believe that for HQCJ, my skills may be in demand. I'm talking about those skills that have to do with anti-corruption activities, those related to professional ethics, professional education, and professional assessment of knowledge and skills that teachers and scientists may have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Halai. In your motivation letter, you say, I believe that the introduction, that's a translation, whether the translation is correct, I don't know. So I'm sorry if it is wrong. But what I have read is that you say in your motivation letter, I believe that the introduction of an element of integrity in interaction with judges is crucial for the composition of the HQCJ. After all, dishonest people are usually enough competent to understand how the system works under proper conditions and what benefits can be derived by using the judicial power in unfair and in a dishonest manner. You recall this quote?
Yes, I remember something like this. I do remember this quotation. Do you mean that I need to comment on this quotation?
Well, when I read it, I did not understand it. Maybe you can explain what you want to say. This possibly because of the translation.
So let me explain what I meant. I cannot assess the quality of the translation, but I can tell you what I wrote in my motivational letter. People who don't have integrity may be professionally competent. They understand how the system works. They have a perfect understanding of how the system works, so that in the future they can assume what personal gain they can get from this knowledge of the system. If they have the integrity, that's where they stop. They know how the system works, and they continue working in an honest way. But if they have this element where they lack integrity, they use all these instruments, all these life hacks about the functioning of the system, and they use this knowledge for their own gain, not for the benefit of the public.
I understand that. But what I also read is that you say that you believe that the introduction of an element of integrity in the interaction with judges is crucial. And that I don't understand. I would say that if you go to any judge, it's understood that there should be a high level of integrity when you communicate with the judge in his position as a judge. So what would you like to introduce then?
What I meant here is that integrity should be assessed during the stages of assessment of judges, during selection procedures of judges, while we are reviewing the information about judges, while we are conducting periodical assessments of judges, and during periodical training of judges. I'm not saying that the integrity is not there as yet. What I'm saying is that it's quite typical for Ukraine to have the professional competence as the primary competence. And some people believe that integrity is the secondary component. And I do believe that integrity and professional competence should be equal. And I have the instruments to implement this.
Okay, now I understand this. Thank you for that. Did you always declare your real estate in your declarations?
I've been filling out e-declarations since e-declaration was introduced, even before I was a public servant. So I've been filling them out since 2017, and they should be available on the website of the national agency. But of course, there is now limited access to the declarations, but I know that the Commission has reviewed my declarations.
Yes, but did you always, let's say, declare all your real estate in the declarations?
I would like to tell you that all people in Ukraine, since e-declaration has been introduced, had to learn the process of transparent declaration, of correct filling out of those declarations, correct declaration of what you own. And I'm the same. I'm learning how to fill out the declaration correctly. Sometimes I have to consult my colleagues who are more knowledgeable about this. Sometimes I have to refer to legislation to make my own conclusions on what should be declared and how it should be declared. And I try to be objective there.
Okay, but is this answer you give, the answer is, if I understand correctly, no, I did not always declare all my real estate in the declarations?
No, this answer of mine leaves me room, leaves me space for retreat. So if there are some remarks about me non-declaring the value of my apartments, one of which belongs to my family and the other one belonging to my parents, and if you're asking me if I was declaring it in a correct way, then I will tell you yes, but maybe I should have mentioned the value of those apartments. I have nothing to hide. I'm not hiding anything intentionally in my declarations.
Okay. Well, I read here that you would, I cannot myself read all those declarations because they are in Ukrainian and they have not all been translated. But I read here that you missed here and there something. And the point I want to make is that if I look at you, you're the head of correctional service, you're a professor in ethics and etc. Apparently, no doubt, you're a very, very bright man. And if I ask you, did you declare all your real estate in the declaration, you don't give a clear answer. I would say you have to be able to say, yes, I did, of course I did.
Thank you, Robert. Well, I was following a different logic while answering your question. Thank you for the clarification. So you're asking me why you, this smart man, don't have that much of property. Well, I do declare everything that I have and everything is available on the website.
Okay. Maybe, Mr. Chairman, sorry? We pass to...
If you're ready, I have some questions, but if you like.
I do have questions. Thank you.
Okay, then it's your turn.
Thank you for your participation, Mr. Halai. In your motivation, you say, being a reformist by nature, I introduce changes in my environment wherever I work. I think that's a good thing. I think we need people like that on the High Qualifications Commission. But 2 pages later, you say, I left my 20 years of service in the police during the Revolution of Dignity. I did not communicate this widely. So you left, you didn't communicate it. Did you introduce changes as a reformer would when you were there? Or was this an exception to the statement that you made on your first page?
That's an interesting question. Well, I try to follow honesty and dignity, and I try to move forward as far as my career is concerned, as far as the environments where I work are concerned, and I try to introduce changes wherever possible. And I did the same at the Academy of Internal Affairs, which is a leading university for law enforcement professionals. And my key innovations at the Academy was practice-oriented training, when the students, future policemen, were providing legal support to regular citizens. And in this way, they were learning legal values and respecting human rights. This remains to be a novelty for the police system. So that happened between 2013 and 2014. And during that period, I left my work as the head of the department of the Academy of Internal Affairs for various motivations. And my decisions to switch jobs are not based on emotions alone. So those were balanced decisions. But the key factor there was that I did not accept the way in which the work of law enforcement and police was displayed during the Revolution of Dignities, when the rights of protesters were violated, when the right to freedom of expression was violated, and when the police were shown as victims, as people who were beaten by the protesters.
But you think in retrospect, Mr. Halai, Professor Halai, that you might have said something about your concerns, you might have spoken out more conscientiously so that possibly more people would have understood your perspectives and what was happening at the police, in the police office? I mean, none of us is perfect in dealing with our day-to-day environment, but do you think in retrospect you could have done more to communicate the difficulties that were there?
Maybe I wasn't persistent enough to express my position in a more public way, having made the decision that I have made. So I decided not to stay within the system that was violating human rights, and I decided to reload my work, to restart my work.
Okay, let me ask you a question about your academic career. Academic careers in Ukraine are much different, it seems to me, than they are in the United States, where I come from, at least in one particular respect. In the United States, many of the top scholars will have written a small handful of articles or books or reports over the course of their career. Yet it seems like there's many in Ukraine, as yourself, who've written 300 papers. That's a huge amount of papers, and I don't know many scholars in my country who can compare with that. Can you tell me, however, how I translate those 300 papers to your potential contributions on the High Qualifications Commission? For example, which one of those, in your judgment, is most important and most relevant to the work that you would be doing on the High Qualifications Commission? Does one come to mind that would satisfy that?
Thank you for the question. Let me tell you a little bit more. Let me give you some wider context. I will not take much of your time with that. So, my academic papers include not just scholarly papers, some are also publicist papers. Not all of them are lengthy. Some of them are only 3 or 4 pages long, so this is not such a huge bulk of papers. But among my academic papers, up to 100 are those that characterize the issues of integrity in public service. These are questions related to governance in government bodies and the reform of legislation and the operation of government bodies. And these academic papers are not just scientific papers. Some of them are very practical, and they are notes on the blog. But what is the most relevant are the instruments, the methodology, the tools for assessment. I have written about these things a lot. So, for instance, I was assessing the work of the public sector, of self-government, of the police, trying to assess how efficient this or that government body was in their performance. So I was using not some subjective approach, but instrumental analysis. And I'm most proud of these papers. I believe there is up to a dozen of these that may be used in the work of HQCJ.
Because it would be very difficult for myself or the commission to review all of those, is there a single one you can identify as the one that's either the most relevant to the work of this commission or else the one of which you're most proud?
Давайте я наведу приклад інструменту.
Let me provide you an example of an instrument that I developed back in 2017, 2018 for the penitentiary system, being an expert of the Council of Europe. So this instrument is called an instrument of internal penitentiary inspections, and it tells you how we can assess whether a specific prison works according to standards or whether it violates the standards. And this instrument also allows for enhancement of those standards. So we can apply the same to the selection of judges. So we can analyze the dossiers of the judges. I think this may be relevant.
And can I ask you where we can find that? Can I ask you to give us a citation or a journal where that's been published so that we can move on?
Цей інструмент і зараз використовується.
This instrument is used in the work of penitentiary system by the Ministry of Justice. The results of my work were transferred to those who commissioned them. I don't have a separate publication.
Я маю ці матеріали.
I do have the materials. If it's possible, I can send them to you.
Well, if it's not too inconvenient, it certainly wouldn't hurt. Well, thank you very much, Professor Halai. I appreciate your time, and thanks again for participating.
Okay, thank you. Пане Андрію, доброго дня. Моє прізвище Мізинцев.
Good afternoon, Andrii. My last name is Mezintsev. I will be the next one to ask you questions.
Хочу одразу сказати, що я теж, як і Роберт, звернув увагу.
Let me tell you that, just as Robert, I paid attention to your statement about the introduction of the integrity component in the interaction with judges. And from your answer, I understood that you will be paying most of your attention to this component in your future work.
Поділяю вашу думку, яку
And I share the opinion that you've expressed here today and in your motivational letter as well, that
професійні
not
корупціонери є
infrequently
висококомпетентними
professional corrupt people
людьми. Думку, що є
are indeed highly competent, and I do believe it's dangerous
з чудовим
to appoint people with a brilliant professional background but dubious integrity,
професійного і глибоко інтелектуального
because professional and intellectual corrupt people
спіймати за руку і
are harder to catch red-handed,
складно його притягнути.
and it's even more difficult to hold them to account.
якому саме
At the same time,
або, як ви зазначили,
what
елементу
specific aspect or element of integrity are you going to draw your
основний
to
критерій
focus your attention on? So, what's your key criteria in the assessment of candidate judges as far as integrity is concerned? Thank you, Yevhen, for the question.
таке. Доброчесність
So,
вона завжди
let me tell you the following. Integrity is always assessed in relation to other indicators, in relation to the bulk of information that is available about a person.
і в питаннях доброчесності
I do believe that in the issues of integrity, we should look at priorities.
запобігання найбільшому
And the priority is to
скажімо,
prevent the greater evil.
позиції як
When I was analyzing the positions of civil society organization, for instance, how they assess integrity of judges, they have many indicators there, like being appointed by the previous political regime, or being a judge for the Maidan cases, or hearing cases with related to traffic regulations violations,
можливості пояснити свої статки.
being transparent about the assets that they have. And frankly speaking, well, these indicators are important. I cannot say that one of them is less important than the others, but we need to treat them all together.
Що суддя
And for me, one of the telling signs of a judge who lacks integrity is them being unable to explain the source of their assets. Well, that's quite a logical explanation. Let's go back to some of the questions already asked today about non-declaring, or rather non-declaring the value of the apartments that you own. So please, could you tell us why you didn't declare the value of those apartments? Why did you do that? Thank you.
я у
So let me be very brief.
яку володію з сім'єю у Києві,
So I own an apartment in Kyiv,
яка є квартирою моїх батьків,
and there is also an apartment
сім'я у
that is owned by my family in Lutsk. So I declared these two apartments. They are not big apartments.
їх у декларації, але не
So I indicated them in the declaration, but I did not mention their value because, frankly speaking,
товар, який має
I've never looked at them as some commodity that has value. I was not buying those apartments. I didn't know the price of these apartments. I didn't consider it to be important to find out the value. Well, it was in the past that it wasn't obligatory to mention the value, but now you do have to indicate that in the declaration. Could you please tell me, do you have the documents that prove the right of ownership? Because the documents should specify some kind of price. Even if it's gift agreement, there should be some value indicated. Even if it's an agreement on privatization of the apartment that was issued back in the 90s. So at least have made a price, but a specific price should be indicated in the title documents. So why did you decide not to indicate the value? Yevhen, I may surprise you, but in the certificate on privatization of the apartment owned by my parents, and in the certificate on privatization of my apartment, no price is mentioned. That's why I did not indicate the price. To tell you the truth, it's quite a strange situation because I did have an apartment that was privatized back in 1993, and there was a price indicated there. Well, If the price is not mentioned, it's up to you to settle this with NACP. And why are we looking so carefully at the declarations? It's because we don't want to lose some of our members should they be recommended. Ukraine already is suffering because we don't have an HQCJ, and we would like for all of the vacancies to be filled and for all of HQCJ members to be safe against any complaints from NACP. Because NACP may have some questions about the correctness of their declarations. So we're just wishing everyone good. And it would be a shame should anyone be dismissed as an HQCJ member, and we don't want to go through this process again. Let's proceed to the next question. In your opinion, from a theoretical point of view and according to your own vision, who is more prone to corrupt risks? And who is more prone to abuse their position? A wealthy candidate judge or a poor, well, hypothetically poor? Poor means that a person doesn't have a car and doesn't have an apartment or a house. So which of the two candidates is more prone to corruption and why?
It's a very good question, but a controversial one. But the logic is that this question doesn't have the right or wrong answer. The answer is that the candidate of greater integrity is the candidate who is transparent over a long period of time and for whom no characteristics of a lack of integrity can be identified. So the answer to this question actually can be taken only if we go out of the box. Good. Then let's move on. We have appointed good judges who are men of integrity, and over the period of 4 years, they have got some positive experience in inverted commas. They have borrowed it from their senior colleagues and have also started being involved in some strange manipulations. What do you think? What should be the method that could be used to interrupt this chain for new judges not to be spoiled, taking into account the experience of the judges who have been working for many years and who are corrupt? Well, I do not state that judges who work over a long period of time are more corrupt. Of course, I don't state this as well, but just I want to say that people gradually with time can see, I mean, good, honest people can see some opportunities for fraud. They see these opportunities and start using them. Maybe looking at the experience of some specific colleagues. So what could prevent this type of influence and this type of temptation? What could prevent them from abusing their office? And this question is actually the quintessence of how we should be preventing corruption risks and violations of integrity in the judiciary. And again, I'm advocating the instrumental approach, which stands for the effective work of the institutions that could, first of all, identify the signs and the characteristics of corruption risks, then to respond to the risks identified for the person to be punished or at least condemned, and then to bring to the judicial environment and to the society the message that there would be some responsibility for that. That is the way the tool of corruption prevention works. And who should do this? Well, the High Council of Justice, the High Qualifications Commission of Judges, and the National Agency in Corruption Prevention, and also other anti-corruption bodies in their interaction, and also in their interaction with the civil society and using the tools of transparent register registers, declarations, disciplining,
і аналізу корупційних
and analysis of corruption risks.
Давайте відволічемося від
Good.
цієї
Let's somehow
філософської теми.
get distracted from this topic, which is rather philosophical, and let's discuss another issue, the issue of the marginal age.
Правило, відповідно до якого
Now we have the rule according to which the judge can be staying in the judicial position for lifetime.
це слово довічно
And this word lifetime actually is up till the age of 65, which is a paradox. So it means that that's the end of life in 65, though it's really not the case. So I know that in the US, and I know this because I underwent some practical training in this country, federal judges are appointed really for lifetime. And they can hold their positions until the point of time. Well, they have a joke like this, that when you become the one resembling an old bulldog, then you should be retired. But that also, of course, depends on your own feeling. And you can be a judge at the age of 70, you will just get the status of senior judge, and you can work for as long as you want. If I'm not mistaken, there is a story when there was a judge, an incumbent judge, federal judge, who was 102 years old. So should we keep to this threshold, to this marginal age, 65 years, or probably we should also give an opportunity to judges to work until the point of time when they still feel some energy for doing this, for introducing changes in the judiciary, for giving their experience, sharing their experience to young people. What do you think?
два перевірочних питання, які
Well, just two questions that will help us draw a conclusion. So the first statement is, could it be possible? I mean, this is about studying for an experience. If other countries can have a system like that, we could think that, okay, probably it's also possible with us. And let's also recall what was our pension legislation. A man of 60 and a woman of 55 are pensioners. But that has changed. The pension age has increased. So I think that the age of retirement
65 років. Ймовірно.
could probably be changed as well. I don't mind. That is really the practice that could be implemented. But I'm just interested in your opinion, whether it would be useful to do this or not, or let it be 65, let them retire and give the way to young people. What is your priority view?
Компетентні і
I
доброчесні
think that competent judges who are men of integrity could
вік і стан здоров'я
actually continue.
в нашій державі
The age and the health condition in our country, as the European country, can actually allow you to do this longer. And how much longer? Well, here we need some discussion. So probably not for lifetime, but the period could be extended. Ted?
Thank you, Mr. Professor Halai. It's Ted Zarzechny. I looked at the motivation document that you prepared. Indeed, we have many documents that have been provided with respect to all of the candidates. But in reviewing the biography that you filed, I got the impression that you have never worked as a lawyer in the courts. That is to say, and I was trying to identify your experience with the work of judges. And am I correct in that conclusion? And I assume that your experience with the work of judges is mostly academic and theoretical.
абсолютно так.
Right. You're absolutely right.
All right, thank you. I do want to move on, however, to some of the comments that you have made about your view of the High Qualification Commission and its work. You say, among other things, that it will be crucial to reach the well-balanced regulatory and organizational development of cooperation between the HQCJ and the High Council of Justice. What exactly do you mean by that? What would you consider to be an appropriate organizational development of cooperation? They operate as two independent bodies. Now, you're quite right in observing that they have a common goal, but you speak of organizational development of cooperation. Now, I don't understand what you mean by that. Please explain.
Thank you for the question. You've been absolutely right in saying that these two entities have one and the same goal, which is ensuring effective judiciary. And if you got one and the same goal, in particular selection of staff for courts, you have to interact. They have to interact with each other. So they have to interact in terms of identifying the characteristics of incompetent and corrupt judges, and in terms of dismissing those judges. And development and good training of judges, professional training of judges, well, the decision here is to be passed by the HQCJ, but the standpoint of the High Council of Justice is also very important. That's why I think that they need to coordinate their activity. It's necessary. And it all depends on whether they respect each other and whether they really interact. The success of the judicial reform depends on their coordination, on their interaction. The law of Ukraine on the judiciary and status of judges, and generally the legislation in this field, has not been fully developed. It is being amended and will still be amended. So we must be flexible and know how to jointly be looking for better ways of interaction and implementation of mandates. Let me give you an example that gives you some feedback. It is from the interview of one of the first days, if I may. Good? Thank you. So, one of the interviewees, one of the candidates of the first day, well, there was an issue raised concerning if there is some information in mass media about a judge being not a man of integrity, and Robert was frustrated with the answer that the HQCJ cannot do anything about that. So I could comment upon that. First of all, such cases need to be taken into account. The description of this case should be indicated in the judicial dossier, but there should be a remark that the information has not been verified. Then the detailed judicial dossier should be provided to the High Council of Justice. And also, this case probably could be considered by the National School of Judges, and it could be even a case for one of the trainings within the National School of Judges. And also, there could be an article, a blog written saying that, of course, the case is not confirmed, but it would be a case to consider. So I think that judicial government, self-government bodies have to act in a comprehensive way, respecting their mandate and being responsible for their performance.
Well, quite frankly, with that explanation, I don't even remember the question that I asked. My question dealt with the development of cooperation between the HQCJ and HCJ and organizational development. And I'm not so sure that you addressed that question, but let me move on. You commented about the National School of Judges, and you make the point here that the National School of Judges, you would recommend that there be some change in the curriculum. Now, have you reviewed the curriculum of the National School of Judges? because it seems to me that some of the suggestions that you make are already contained in the curriculum of the National School of Judges.
Дякую за питання.
Thank you for the question.
Я дивився, які програми.
Well, I have had a look at the curriculum and the programs located or available on the website of the National School, and I made my conclusions on the basis of them. To make sure, I would need to have a detailed look at all the programs, not just taking what is available on the website, because probably these are outdated materials. I just wanted to say that it's rather easy to check the curricula of the National School of Judges and the training methodologies, whether they are professional and whether they are practice-oriented. And I just meant that it would be easy for me to check them in this respect.
Yes, well, your statement simply says that it is advisable to revise the training of judges with values and a practical component at its basis. And I would be very shocked if anyone suggested that the National School of Judges is not preoccupied and does not deal with judicial values and practical components of the operation of the judiciary. That is, those are two fundamental components, and I find it surprising that you should suggest that those should be revised because they don't exist. The same concern is what I have with respect to changes, and you put it this way: it is necessary to promptly update the regulations and procedures of the High Qualification Commission activities. And you particularly focus upon integrity, and I get the impression from your motivation letter, together with some of the comments that you now have made in your interview, that you feel that there is a deficiency that exists in the methodology and the process of the High Qualification Commission as it exists, and their application with respect to the most important component of integrity. Now, in my experience and my reading of the regulations of the High Qualification Commission, it is quite clear to me that they very much recognize the importance of integrity to the evaluation of judges, that they receive assistance from the reports of NABU, NACP, the judicial dossiers that are provided and that are in their possession, the comments of the civil society organizations, and of course the role and involvement of the PIC. So what other information do they need to discharge their duties other than what is already provided in the regulations and that they have already been applying in their work prior to their discontinuation?
Дякую.
Well, thank you for the question. Let me mention that
І слухачів, які професійно займаються
for all those who are professionally dealing with this issue, in particular for our viewers, it's not a secret that the work of the judiciary in terms of the integrity and
урядування в частині доброчесності,
also not only the judiciary but judicial self-government bodies, well, we have, and the civil society organizations, it's kind of difficult to interact for them. There is a willingness to interact in order to ensure integrity, but at the same time, anti-corruption bodies want to work more with judges, but judicial self-government bodies want to express their gratitude to anti-corruption bodies for their readiness to work with this issue, but they don't want these anti-corruption bodies to interfere into the decision-making. And I think that this is now the legislative dilemma. And in particular, quite recently, we have been commenting on the state anti-corruption program. And one of the segments discussed was related to the judiciary. So I would like to say the following. The society and public experts who are anti-corruption professionals are of the opinion that the judiciary should ensure a better integrity level. What about the self-government authorities? I mean, judicial self-government authorities? Well, we should inquire into that to hear their opinion. But since I'm a person who has some practical and scientific interest in the tools of ensuring integrity, know that where we have information, where we have dissatisfaction in the society, and therefore lack of integrity, we need to be looking for the ways to remedy the situation at the basic level. It is obvious for me that integrity systems in the judiciary must be improved using the instrumental way. Sorry for giving such a long answer. I'm ready to provide a more detailed answer, but that will take too much time.
All right, thank you very much for your answers. Mr. Chairman, I refer to you.
Thank you. Пане Андрій,
So, Andrii, in your motivation letter,
зазначаєте, я про це
you mention, let me quote, that I've been thinking about the reasons for unsuccessful Ukrainian judicial reforms.
але не розкриваєте, в чому це.
But you do not disclose those reasons.
В чому вони?
So what are the reasons?
Це питання, яке
Well,
важко відповісти коротко, але я спробую.
It's difficult to give a quick answer to the question, but the quick answer actually is that
Завантажуючи і створюючи інструментарій
keeping reloading the system, updating the system, we
корупційні ризики.
still preserved corruption risks in it. Sorry for this trivial answer, but you know, when you organize some changes, when you try to reload the system of the judiciary, of the prosecutor's office, of the police, but you still allow for some gaps, for some opportunities for manipulation, some wordings that allow you, for example, to go through the qualification assessment, but then to appeal and to get back to your position, ignoring the decision of the High Qualifications Commission. So this is the spoiled reform, the disrupted reform, which is manifested to the society as the failing one.
Дякую. Я просто чому,
Thank you.
просто чому
You know why I'm asking?
А от ця реформа, яка зараз
And what about the reform that is happening right now? How do we ensure
того самого?
that this reform is not a failing one?
Проводячи співбесіди з членами
Well,
Вищої
you have interviews with the
ці співбесіди для суспільства,
future members. These are open interviews.
із членами Вищої ради правосуддя.
And you do this contrary to what was done within the Ethics Commission with their closed interviews. You update the tools, the instruments of work of the Commission, and you actually clear it from some corruption elements. You have open and transparent procedures, and this means that you prevent corruption. So you update the tool range and you ensure effective performance that will be good for the society, well perceived by the society and by the expert community.
Дякую.
Thank you for your answer.
Я її почув. Скажу чесно, я відкрив
Well, to tell the truth, I just open up in Google your publications, your articles.
І якщо дуже узагальнити,
And to be more to be more general, I would say that,
без усілякого сарказму, що
and
у сферу
there is no sarcasm in that your field of interest actually includes everything. You keep writing about law clinics, legal clinics, the rights of patients in Ukraine, the legal upbringing of Ukrainian young people, a penitentiary service, of course, and even home violence, domestic violence in the US. So we are interested in all those issues as a researcher. So here are two questions of mine. What is the major field of your interests? Where are you the expert? And the second thing is,
не так багато знайшов публікацій.
I have not found many publications related to the judiciary.
Будь ласка.
So please comment upon this.
Дякую. Щоб розібратися щодо причин тих
So to get clear about the publications,
як кажуть, розложити
you just need to classify all of them, to categorize them. My work with law clinics is the work on human rights protection. We had a lot of patients in those clinics, a lot of clients. We accumulated the number of those cases, and therefore we developed several articles on them. We also protected, not just protected the rights, but we also did some awareness raising to explain to the society how certain tools work. That's why I have some articles on awareness raising, legal awareness raising, and these are not separate things. This is one and the same thing. Also, I wrote on the work of law enforcement bodies and
державному секторі.
public administration bodies, and it's working with practical training, the way it should look like, and anti-corruption. These are the fields of my scientific interest. I would say that there are 4 fields. It's like public administration, of jurisdictional entities and state law enforcement ones, work with penitentiary administration, human rights and related things, and practical training.
Я засмучу дійсно,
And
дотичне до моїх сфер наукових інтересів.
it's really true that the system of the judiciary has something to do with my field of interest only through this first block, public administration of law enforcement and state jurisdictional institutions. And I can tell you the truth that I really need to go deeper into the judiciary. I'm not a court lawyer. I need to improve my professional competence in the field of the judiciary. And as the Commission has already mentioned, I am interested in the issues of the judiciary.
Частині правосуддя мій
And
інтерес професійна етика.
my interest here is professional ethics, majorly, and the issue of integrity of the people who are judges. So these are the things where I have something to do with the judiciary and where I am an expert and where I have not unique but rather special knowledge and skills. Thank you for the answer. Andrii,
Знаю не так багато експертів
I know not that many experts
пенітенціарної
in
системи,
the penitentiary system,
тільки вас.
probably only you.
Ви пропрацювали там
You have
2
worked there for 2 years,
моє особисте
and
враження, що ви
my personal impression
дуже глибоко
is that you are a very deep and systemic professional.
і мені здається,
And it
що
seems to me
у випадку призначення
that if you are appointed, let's assume that you are appointed a member of the HQCJ, you will definitely have to leave the direction you are working in now.
по-перше, чи не здається вам, що
First of all,
пенітенціарна
doesn't
система
look
буде вас не вистачати?
like the penitentiary service will lack you. And don't you think that probably you have not yet managed to do everything you could within the penitentiary service over 2 years? Well, you know, I've been working actually only for about 1 year within the penitentiary system. Yeah, maybe I was mistaken. So I've really failed to do a lot of things as yet, but I've also managed to do a lot of things. Here is one story about ecology. If you want to protect a tree, just plant a tree. If you want to protect 10 trees, become a forester. If you want to protect 100 trees, become as the state inspector who works with poachers. And if you want to protect the judiciary, become a member of the High Qualification of Judges of Ukraine and help give a sentence to those who do deforestation of thousands of hectares. So I'm choosing just the thing where I can help the most. This is my key interest, why I'm considering this field and why I've submitted an application. I want to be more useful for the state. I don't have so much professional background left, so I want to make my contribution. I will not leave the penitentiary service, don't be afraid of that. I'm interested in this field, and science actually is the thing which allows you to work in one place, but still to deal with some research in the other field. Clear? Your standpoint is clear. Thank you. No more questions. Robert? No questions, Stephen? No questions? Johan has the question, right? Well, yes. Well, it's not a question, it's kind of a suggestion for a discussion. At the previous interviews, we were trying to find it out what would be better, to apply the presumption of integrity to our judicial candidates or to apply the presumptions of lack of integrity. And I would ask you a deeper question as to the expert. Which of the standards of proof would you like to apply in order to study the criteria of integrity of your candidates? A sufficient well-grounded suspicion or beyond any reasonable doubt? And what would you choose and why? Well, thank you. I haven't heard these discussions because I didn't want to become nervous while listening to every single interview. But I am the supporter of the fact that the person is considered to be a person of integrity beyond any reasonable doubt. I mean, that until we have evidence and proof, the person should be considered a person of integrity. I think that ethics and integrity are close categories. Tent, any questions to the candidate?
I have none, thank you. No, nothing further, thanks.
So since the commissioners don't have any further questions to you, please, Andrii, according to our procedure, we give you a chance to spend some 2 or 3 minutes in order to specify, clarify something, to add what you failed to say, maybe to provide some comments. You're welcome. Thank you. Dear Commission, it's not that much important for me to win as to wish that Ukraine wins. But the victory of Ukraine depends on our reforms. So I really wish the Commission to elect the HQCJ to be proud of and not to be ashamed of. And, election is coming, and I remember some reasonable books about election. Choose me, and you will not be sorry for this choice. Well, thank you. Thank you. Let's give the floor to the chairperson of the Commission. So we are about to conclude this interview. Thank you, Andrii. That's the end of the interview. Good luck. Goodbye.